Come and get started on a new mission, a new direction, a new intention. Welcome to 5.8G Alive at Connections 50 Plus. I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite.
And I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, catering to all your prospects in the third act of life.
Economic well-being, social gratification, personal fulfillment.
Join us on Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Connections 50 Plus Facebook page, YouTube channel,
and on Gael the Caribbean.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Connections 50 Plus 5.8G Alive. Thank you for joining us. I am Jennifer Gibbons Joseph, one of the co-creators of Connections 50 Plus. And as usual, with me on the show is my colleague.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I am Terry-Ann Joseph Brathwaite, one of the co-creators also of Connection 50 Plus, which brings you 5.8G Alive. Jennifer, today we hot coming. Oh, let's first thank everybody, Jennifer. We had our forum and it was such a success, this reset business. And we're going on reset again today.
So really a nice, intimate forum. And of course, all the time, we thanks for those who joining us. Thanks for our presenter, our facilitator, Maureen Bowen. And Terry-Ann, we always get really great feedback. So we will continue having these forums every now and again. We will let you know. And Terry-Ann, for me, I had a great weekend. I did, and this is just very quick. I was so happy that I did attend the Freedom Jazz show that Bonnet Pickford had. It was beautiful. And thank you. I saw one of our followers came to me. I didn't know her personally, but introduced herself and said how she, follow us and she liked our show. Thank you. I really like it, Terry-Ann, when we go out and we have, persons coming to us showing appreciation for this show. Yeah. And today, as Terry-Ann mentioned, we're moving into a very, a topic that
Jennifer, I have to mention this.
Sure.
Talking about our followers, I'm not there right now. I'm actually at an international conference, and there are a group of friends from Kenya, Africa, who follow us. So, hello, David.
Wow.
Thank you very much. He really does appreciate the topics that we give, and he has encouraged many of his friends and people in our cohort to look on, and I promise that one day I will get him on the show. So we do have a global
That'll be
audience.
Nice. Yes.
So today is a different kettle of fish.
So we would move in. We have with us Dr. Allison Gibbons, who have been with us before, and some of you all already know Dr. Gibbons, and she is a family and relationship psychologist, among many other things. A gerontologist and years of experience. And we thought she would be ideally professional to come on to chat with us about LGBTQIAP. Hey, it's a lot, but so
don't turn off the TV. Don't turn off. Promise to listen to the end.
So there's a lot to talk about, and we we always bring on professionals and look at topics that we know you all want to hear about, but you don't discuss in public or among yourselves. So enjoy.
Okay.
Okay, as mentioned, that we're having a discussion now this evening on this show that is it's taboo, and that is on the LGBTQ. And I saw now, I looked it up now, it have additional letters, IA, but I would leave it to the expert, Dr. Allison Gibbons, to really go through before we get into the meat of the conversation, to, go through all these letters for us. And then after that, we would have that discussion. So Dr. Gibbons, thanks for being with us. And we would like you to start by, just telling us what all these letters are all about. Some of us really don't know.
Not sure what time of the day this is being broadcast,
That's
but
okay.
a very quick, almost a pre-introduction to the introduction, that historically we would have used the terms heterosexual versus homosexual, meaning people who were in relationships with the opposite sex, and homosexual being people who were assumed to be in relationships with people of the same sex or the same gender. And then we went to straight versus gay, and gay really referred to men because somehow men were in the spotlight more so than women in terms of people who had relationships with the same sex. Currently, you would hear the term binary versus non-binary, and it's the non-binary issues that have all those letters. Binary just means one and its opposite, and the assumption was that all human beings operated on a binary level, meaning you and somebody of the opposite side.
1 0,
Non-binary,
a 1 and a 0.
yeah. Non-binary refer to people who operate differently, meaning it's not just them and somebody on the opposite side. Could be a whole host of things, as we are discovering that more and more letters are being added. And it's not just added for fun, it's added to help all of us understand all of the issues that nature has presented to us. So the non-binary terms would be, LGBTQIA and P, really. And it's L for lesbian, which would be women who are in relationships with women. And gay refer to men who are in relationships with men. The B for bisexual, which would be individuals who would, to use commonality, swing both ways, meaning in a relationship, they can be and they operate and they're comfortable in a relationship with the opposite sex or with someone of the same sex. They may go from one back to the other, or they may just pick and stay that way. It's not necessarily that they are promiscuous. It's just that whichever person they meet and get comfortable with, they can have a relationship with. And that would be someone who is straight or gay, they may be in a relationship with. The T is for transsexual or transgender and sometimes transvestite. The difference would be people who feel differently inside from the gender they are ascribed on the outside. So a guy may look in the mirror and see a guy, but internally he doesn't feel like that. He feels like a girl, and it's not something he just manufactures, because we don't only have physical manifestations of gender. We have things that go on the inside, outside of human sight. But of course, we are getting to know more and more about that. So the sympathetic side, meaning the feeling side and so on, is very legitimate. So people who look one way and feel a different way are transsexual. But transgender really refers to those who actually go to lengths to get their outside to match their inside. And there's surgery for that. And that's also legitimate, because when we get to the I in intersex, we'll understand why that happens. So you have transsexual, they may never do anything surgical, but they know they operate differently than how they look. Transgender, the common term would be trans, or the popular term, people who actually get surgical correction to match how they feel. And that could be women or that could be men. So transgender would be born what looks female, but switch through surgical procedures to actually get physical and feelings matched up. A transvestite may or may not be gay, but it usually refers to a man who likes to dress like a woman, who prefers to present himself to the world that way. He may have a regular heterosexual relationship with a woman, but he likes to dress in women's clothing from underwear right out, or I should say from outerwear right in. And there are many people who have regular relationships with many men, with women, but who prefer to do that. And there are those who are also transvestite and gay and transgender. In other words, we're looking at the outside. The Q, so we had LGBT, which covers like 3 words, and Q, which covered 2 words. Queer and questioning. Queer would be people who don't limit themselves because they're still questioning like who they really are, because they have so many confused, and I don't say the word confused as judgment. They just have complex feelings about how to present themselves gender-wise, or who to have relationships with. And those are those individuals who feel that we may question themselves for a long time, and they tend to get depressed and so on, and that's a generality, of course, because of that questioning nature. So, but they are getting more and more comfortable describing themselves as queer, meaning, don't ask me, I don't know. Stop trying to put me in a box. It's really what their approach is. And thankfully, we are allowing them, we hope some of us are allowing them to be who they are and decide. But it's not a decision in the sense that they're straight and deciding to be gay, as people think it's a choice. No, it's just that their life is complex internally and externally. So the word queer covers that. And they themselves, people who are queer actually, as I said, are getting more and more comfortable saying, look, I'm queer. You figure it out. That's your problem, not mine. And it's good that they can reach that point to say, hey, you have a problem, I do. You want to put me in a box, you create the box and decide what it is. And the word questioning, and particularly for younger people, it's like they're not sure what's happening to them. They don't know what direction to go in. So, but they know that they're not binary, that they're non-binary. So that's where the questioning comes in. The I, which is kind of now, Jennifer had mentioned that there's an I and there's an A. The intersex, which is really where the biology is legitimate. And there was a time when people who had children, babies, who didn't fit the normal category, used to hide them away at home and not send them out in public. And they did the same thing to intersex people, babies. In other words, a child is born, the word hermaphrodite used to be used biologically with organs that are not definite. You can't say this is a boy and you can't say it's a girl. And parents would panic, and doctors too, and they would jump in and do quick surgery and sometimes mess the person up for life. And you have a whole movement of people who that happened to when they were babies, and now they're suing hospitals and doctors now that they're in their 20s because, their inside still doesn't match their outside. Sometimes doctors are not sure what organ to move. There may not be a vagina at all, but there looks like a penis. There's a clitoris that looks this way, or they have all the organs.
Wow.
And it's a difficult decision, but parents get, as I say, panic when the doctor says, look, is it a boy or a girl? Well, actually,
I don't know.
So when you tell a parent that, they panic and they push the doctors, to do something about it. So now doctors are stepping back and say, look, when you get old enough, you can decide what you want to be, but this is your life. This is all these things that are going on. So that's the intersex issue. And unfortunately, again, for teenagers, by the time they get to be 10, 11, 12, and they are intersex, they start they feel things. You're getting into puberty. So they know which direction they want to go. Unfortunately, the movement in the US, for example, now and other countries may follow, is to deny them that decision until they get to be 18 and over, where they could make a decision for themselves. But when puberty kicks in, that's the time when hormone treatments work and so on. So it's really pressuring that age group not to do anything about it. And you have a very depressed and, an anxious group of young people who unfortunately are at the mercy of adults making decisions for them and thinking they don't know what they want. An 11-year-old entering puberty whose organs are confused know exactly what they want, but that's a belief that they have to convince adults about, unfortunately. And by the time they're 18, the rate of suicide is very high, within that group compared to the regular population. And us adults have taken away that power and that knowledge from people going through puberty who are intersex and want to live their life in a particular kind of way, and they're being denied that. That's what's going on right now. So that's the I that comes after the Q, and then there is the A for asexual, and that person may have been intersex in one way or be missing organs. If you're missing ovaries, for example, there are no hormones kicking in, to start introducing sexual feelings and so on. And so asexual people who have absolutely no interest in having sex with anybody, that's really what it is. They may look one way or the other. They don't really care, it's just that you can't manufacture feelings. If you don't have the hormones functioning inside you to instigate, sexual interest and sexual feelings when you cross puberty. So you say people are asexual. They go about their lives. In fact, at this point, I would want to add that all of us should understand life is not only about having sex, and we cast judgment on non-binary people as if all their life is just about having sex. They just want partnerships and friends, somebody to set up house with or whatever, or a friend for life or a partner for life. Their life is not defined by who they have sex with, except binary people tend to do that to non-binary people. Meaning, we don't want our lives defined by having sex. But we tend to do that to other people all the time, to look at who they're having sex with and who they're not having sex. Maybe not having sex at all. But that's the kind of judgment we make. And really, I was throwing the P here after the A because that's the word pansexual, and you may hear that as well.
That's a new one for me. The P.
Which really, if you think of the word panoramic, it's a wide panorama of interests and and who you want to hang with or even who you would have sex with. And they refuse to be forced to make choices. They may, and that's a little stretch beyond being bisexual. A bisexual person just either has sex with the opposite or somebody who is just gay. But then you have this panorama of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer, intersex, who pansexual people can be interested in. So if you think queer people don't want to be put in a box, pansexual people absolutely refuse to be put in a box, in terms of anybody defining who they are or who they should have a relationship with, who they should settle down with, who they should marry, who they should live with. Doesn't matter, and pansexual people tend to be a little more carefree, at least again, that's generalization. But once people get to the point of defining themselves as pansexual, they're like, I'm good. You have a problem with that, too bad, kind of thing. So, to be fair, within the heterosexual group, the so-called straight world, there are all types of variations, behind closed doors, except when others find out. But somehow heterosexual people tend to want to cast judgment, on the non-binary group as to what they're doing sexually. if we really examine what straight people do sexually, you know, that's a wide range of behaviors that we tend to hide or pretend we don't participate in or whatever, so that we could stand in judgment of others, which is totally unfair. So there we are with the LGBTQIA and P.
Allison, I think to balance it off, we should bring to light some of the breadth of the heterosexual sexual world. Because people may like, oh, she didn't go into detail on that. But how would someone who's non-binary looking at this heterosexual world, how would they see or categorize their uniqueness?
Yeah, mostly they see binary people as hypocrites, meaning we want to stand in judgment, but we allow ourselves a full range of things, even if it's confined within the binary movement. But of course, you also have people who may present themselves as binary, but they kind of dipping into other things as well, you know, on the other side, you know, and hide it. You know, they stay in the closet about what they do with non-binary people, but they present themselves as binary. They may be married or mostly married, you know, and go experiment or enjoy themselves otherwise. But binary people, in other words, heterosexual members of the heterosexual group, do all kinds of things sexually that are not, so to say, by the book, meaning we have this prescribed set of behaviors that we assume people follow, which is, you know, you have a partner for life, and that's the only person you ever have sex with. And we know that that ain't so. We absolutely know that that ain't so. You know, that people dabble around with many, many, many partners, married or not. You know, marriage could be a cover for that. We have marriage, we have to, you know, people become asexual after a while. Like, I don't really care about having sex anymore. You could go do it with whoever else you want to. You stay married, but you enjoy your asexual life. You know, you have friends, you whatever, and you're really not interested anymore. And that's, you know, and that's done regularly, you know.
Yeah.
You know, in my practice, sometimes I ask married people when last they had sex, they have to scratch their head. They're like, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know, can't remember. You know.
So would you say that in the binary world, the so-called heterosexual normal world, that's
not the usual word normal.
Yeah, all right, there's no normal. Everyone is normal. Everyone is
right.
Normal. So issues as having open relationships.
Oh yeah, open relationships. You're right. Yeah. There are all kinds of relationships.
Infidelity, open relationships.
Open relationships, polyamory,
yes.
Meaning people agree to have a group marriage. It may not be legal in certain parts of the world, but people give themselves that privilege, you know, to have
and having multiple husbands
or multiple wives. You know, in the Western world, that's a no-no on the books, but people still do it. You know, and then they turn around and criticize the cultures that allow it. You know.
I think it's so important to identify the behaviors of the binary group that are not within the norms, because many of us engage in them, but it's a part of life, you know. So you may look at a homosexual man being with infidelity to his partner, and you want to throw 2 big stones behind him.
Yeah.
You're gay and you have an outside partner, but for us, it's only one sin or one abnormality.
And that's an interesting part that we need to revisit it right now in this discussion in terms of who is committing sin and who isn't. You know,
and I'm using the word sin here.
No, I know. I mean, we will continue to explore that word because that's a very important word in this discussion. decide, judging who is committing sin and who isn't, or who could go to confession and and who shouldn't even be accepted
Who is breaking
in the
the
church.
rules?
Yeah, that's not even accept them in the church, much more allow them to go to confession. And of course that's from the Catholic perspective, or anyone else
the Christian perspective.
The Christian perspective in terms of who's committing sin and who isn't. So the binary, straight, heterosexual world of people take the judgment of themselves, and happily cast it on to the non-binary groups, whereas all kinds of different complexities and behaviors and feelings happen, married or not, or having a binary partner or not, happens, and people may even arrange pleasurable things like group sex and partner swapping,
Exactly.
and so on, just for their pleasure, but pleasure is a sin for somebody else, kind of judge, unfair judgment. So that's why I started by saying that I can understand why non-binary people, say that binary people are hypocritical, because, and that's a fair, we are fair game for that criticism, because so much of it is true, I dare say so much of it is true in terms of judging other people. Of course, we judge others within our binary group for sometimes the same thing that we are doing, because if we cast stone at someone else, no one would look at us and what we are doing, kind of approach to life. But unfortunately,
I think if we were to write all the letters down for non-conforming behavior amongst binary
within
people,
the binary group,
we may have a much longer list, than LGBTQ.
At least the non-binary people are honest and say, look, this is who I am.
This is what it is.
This is what it is. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. At least thankfully they have gotten there. There was a time when they used to be forced to hide, or people would attack them, particularly boys and men, more so than girls. I must admit that there was some, gender problems in terms of who we choose to harass about it. A tomboy, a girl who is a tomboy was like, she's just a tomboy, and she was helpful around the house. She could fix a car, she could whatever. Nice. A boy who was interested in girlish things gets harassed, hounded, which unfairly, because he wants to do embroidery, which people assume is a good thing. They kind of allow him to cook, if he's going to be a chef, but not if he's going to cook at home.
Cook for the family. Family.
No. He could cook as a chef and own a restaurant, but he must not cook for the family. Or he could sew men's clothes and be called a tailor, but don't call him. He must not sew women's clothes, otherwise, you want to look at him cross-eyed, kind of thing. So men have been unfairly targeted for that from childhood. As soon as a little boy starts showing any interest in anything that people deem to be girlish, they want to steer him away from that, or they start panicking. People don't panic as quickly if it's a girl who refuses to wear a dress. She could wear pants all day, but boys, they're not. And unfortunately, that's a harassment that still continues, more so for men than for women.
What I would like to come in here to say is that after listening to the description of all the letters, I clearly understand how our cohort, especially our age group, are so confused about what is happening right now in front of them. When I listened to your description, especially about the I, when you got on to the I,
where a lot of those things begin.
That was new information, I must admit. A lot of it, when you describe, I get it now, I should say, in a way, not totally, but especially the I, because you read in here, you read a lot. Of course, you're talking about the states, not well, I'm not sure about locally yet,
Mhm.
certain procedures that's being done, etc. And we tend to be very judgmental. And I understand now, even with all the judgments we have been making, it's because we don't have the knowledge. We're really not informed.
Mhm.
And information is so key to our decision making because,
Mhm.
in our times, in our time, we have been brought up think in a certain way, and you explain it. The boys have to be in a certain way and the girls have to operate in a certain way. We never went in to the feeling, how they felt.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, we didn't talk about it at all. And they were
Mhm.
like had to be in the closet all the time,
Right. Mhm.
you know. So now that it is more open, because I have found the younger people much more tolerant than all these things. They can tell you, so what?
Mhm.
Whereas our age group, we tend to, I mean, it's no, we don't want to see it, we don't want to hear, we don't want them in the house. We're not even studying whether they're under the LGB, nothing. Our thing
Mhm.
is we see them as different, not
Mhm.
conforming. A lot of
Mhm.
our decisions are made based on our values, based on religion and faith,
Mhm.
and not about really understanding the changes now. And it's not that it wasn't so before. It's just I can imagine how many people suffered as a result of lack of knowledge. So now we know. So I'm happy that you were able to go through that. And of course, as we speak, we will get more, hopefully, our audience who listening in will have much more clarity and understand what is happening in today's world. That's what I'll, as you continue, because a lot of different situations come to mind, but I will allow you to go on and, as I get more clarity, I may be able to
Just,
ask a question that may make some more sense, because I could see if we had started off with questions, the questions would have been really stupid from after you explained that. Yeah, so that's just what I
Jennifer,
wanted to
if
say before you move on.
Mhm.
if I may add to what you are saying, I think our cohort, there are probably two groups of people who were in the categorical, the classic ignorance, meaning I do not know, and therefore the definitions that Allison presented would give clarity. But I really do believe that that's a small group. They would have known LBG,
Mhm.
Yeah,
LBG. A lot more would have known T.
Yes.
The rest, the non-binary and the queer and the intersex and so on, they might not have known. But the bulk of them understand non-heterosexuals. And I think your clarification with definition, Allison, is great. But something that we've been talking about a lot, Jennifer, the hypocrisy and the fear
Mhm.
and the
yeah,
dishonesty in
Mhm.
conversation
Mhm.
is the larger issue, because
Mhm.
definitions of all those letters are available.
Mhm.
So if you want to understand what these terms mean,
Look it up.
information is there.
We are
And
living the
that lifting
information
that
world. Yeah,
veil,
right.
yeah, lifting that veil wouldn't then we would
Mhm.
not have the problem that we have now. I
Mhm.
think it is really a lot of bias, hypocrisy, fear of not, what would people say,
Mhm.
embarrassment, that
Mhm.
is really, really
Mhm.
causing all of the trouble and causing us to lose our children, lose our families, some people losing their jobs and things like that. And I suppose those two things really, and
Mhm.
religion in the whole thing is a whole other
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
Mhm,
that's a point well
yeah.
made.
But
That
Tarian,
among
let me
the
just say this
traditional,
too.
yeah. Mhm.
mhm.
It could be as I said, there's a difference, I guess, could be to an era, right? I rarely see and listening, and I know there's a lot of hypocrisy within it, but still not they're not addressing it at all. So they're not going to check out what any letter stand for, right? To me, the majority, well, I'm just talking from my experience. So majority of the people I know within my age group, now I could say the 70 plus, not acknowledging anything. They're not addressing it. They're not, you know why? They're not even going to read anything because they don't want to know. They block off their minds. And I believe with this opening up more, with us discussing it, they may or may not listen to some of the discussions, but I believe they need to unblock, move the blinkers in front of their eyes, and really know, because you said it is affecting families, and it is real right now outside here. It is affecting it in all the system, all the different systems, and we have in all varying areas. And Terry, and we even seeing it, and Allison, I know you're based overseas, so you may not be in touch with what is happening locally. It based on all different things, as you say, the dress, the hairstyle, the thing. You don't want the boys' hair flat or anything because that is a woman thing. You know, all these different things. So I just wanted to, not that I agree with Terry on one hand, but I am seeing it too as something that it is really affecting a lot of our cohort.
Let me say one quick thing about what's happening in Trinidad or the Caribbean versus what's happening in the US, for example. It's really all one and the same thing, simply because the world has shrunk, you know.
Yeah.
Technology.
Social media.
Right. Technology has put us all in the same pot right now. So whatever is happening in the US because of that backlash, and there is, you know, there will be that backlash as well, because people want to reverse, you know, what they think, you know, is happening that they don't like, or they want to hide from. You know, so that's a point well made, both on Tarian's side and Jennifer, in the sense that, okay, you do have the group of people. Yes, information is available, but there are also people who don't want that information. We live in the information era, so information is right there. Things change as we speak. So the addition of the T and the Q and the I and the A and the P, you know, are people who are clarifying things. But I want to go back to the word intersex before I jump to the issue of religion and sin. That it's okay, the word is now, you know, in the public sphere, but the whole business of people being hermaphrodite, which is a word that used to be used biologically, has existed from the start of time, you know, in terms, because people have this assumption that nature is perfect and has the script for everyone. So they start throwing in, well, it's against religion because it's unnatural. And I say, don't confuse the two things. You know, religion is a belief system that's encouraged and nurtured and structured. Natural versus unnatural, it's a moot point to say that anything nature produces is unnatural. You know, it is such a fallacy. And nature, you can't put nature in a box and say they produce everything perfect and by pattern and there's a blueprint for everything.
It's not true. It's just not true.
Every time we say that and we start enjoying the glassy, smooth surface of the ocean, a tsunami hits to say, hey, you know, every time we start enjoying the fruits from the trees, a hurricane will blow down the tree to say, that's nature too. You know, so we can't pick and choose what we think nature is. Nature tells us who she is. Listen, I'm not structured. You know, this will happen today and the next will happen tomorrow. Yeah, you have this picture in your mind of who a perfect human being is. Well, guess what? There are all these other possibilities as well. Deal with it. You know, people's way of dealing with it long time was to accept judgment from others and want to hide away the child or lock them in a closet or pretend it's not theirs. And people are still wanting to pretend that's not my child, or don't come back to my house, or I don't want to be seen with you. It's the same kind of thing as locking the child in a closet. non-binary people borrowed that word closet from the reality of it. That they actually locked your children in a closet.
Children in closets, yes.
Yeah. Because you don't want
Anyone
anybody
who
to
was
see
born with a
them.
disability,
Any
whether
kind
it
of
was physical,
disability. Yeah.
mental, you
Yeah.
were locked away.
You want to lock
And
them away,
that's a
So,
binary behavior.
that is definitely a binary behavior, and they want to blame religion for it. And religion is a little bit to blame for it too. But our own minds that want to decide what's natural and what's unnatural, which is the argument they use to back up the religious argument. And I say, wait, just stop there in terms of who gets to decide what's unnatural, in terms of something that's occurring in nature. The tree that decides not to bear fruit is as natural as the one that's bearing fruit. The ocean that's disturbed is as natural as the one that's as smooth and blue and inviting. We take for granted, the rose bush has thorns,
Bring it
so
closer
on.
to home, Allison, the barren woman.
Yeah, that's what I'm
or
talking
the
about.
barren man
Yeah.
is as natural and normal
as the ones who are, fruitful and replenishing the earth,
Exactly.
And that's nature, So our way of dealing with what we call the imperfect, what we assume to be imperfect, we are deciding what's perfect in nature and what's not. That's a man-made concept in terms of, what's perfect in nature, even coming down to how people look in terms of beauty and who looks how, and and who's more acceptable than whom, what color is more acceptable than another, what hair is more acceptable. Those are the same kind of judgments. So back to people locking, children in a closet because they didn't fit some perfect vision of what a child should be or look like. And people continue with that kind of judgment and that kind of reaction. So people decided to come out of the closet on their own, literally, and metaphorically. And that makes people who think otherwise uncomfortable. So you have those who may or may not seek information, and those who absolutely refuse to seek information because they don't want anyone to change their mind. They prefer to be locked in their own closet, as Bob Marley would say, you're locked in the closet of your own mind. When you're trying to put someone else in a closet, I'm not bashing anyone's religious beliefs, but people should not use this natural versus unnatural concept to justify, their judgment of others. Nature is not neat and tidy. It's not tamed by human beings. It doesn't conform to how we think. In other words, we are trying to control nature and make it conform to our vision. That's a human vision. Nature is much more powerful, than we are. Try to tame a hurricane or a tsunami or decide. So back to the word intersex, as I said, the word hermaphrodite used to be long in biology when doctors couldn't tell a parent whether their baby was a boy or a girl. So that's as old as it is. That's as old as nature. That was from the very start. And in fact, to the point where in some cultures, people actually killed the children. Actually did that. Locking them in a closet was killing their spirit, but people actually destroyed their bodies because they thought they were the devils, the work of the devil, or basically it was the shame, the self-interest kind of shame and embarrassment that caused people to hide away a child or to lock them in a closet or even to murder them. And that whole idea of murder still exists in the adult world in terms of gay men particularly, and transsexual women particularly are the targets. Their life is on the line every day that they step out because somehow gay men and transsexual women tend to, stir up a lot of hatred in people. So people should look to themselves when they feel that kind of hate enough to want to destroy destroy someone out of existence. That's what's happening. So the word intersex may sound new, but the manifestation of it has been around since the world started. You know, and people know that. So sometimes in my work, I ask people to look at themselves and challenge themselves to discover, what did you wake up this morning pretending that you don't know? You know, you're pretending that you don't know your child is gay, or you're pretending that you don't know it exists, and you're pretending you don't know that there's such a thing as intersexuality, and that people have doubtful, body parts that relate to sex. What we can't see, but we know now because biology, the advancement of biology has taught us that it's not just the physical, which is what we see from the outside, or the physiological, which is how the organs function. It's really the part that we don't see, but we know it exists, which is all the hormones and how they work together, or whether they exist or not, and what that determines in terms of how people feel about themselves, or what kind of feelings they express to others, where sexuality is concerned, or where intimate relationships are concerned. May or may not include sex, but who you want to lie down next to in the night and go to sleep, not in order to have sex, but just as a partner for life, or a partner of the moment, whether or not it's for life. And so those are the issues. So the issue of religion and this concept of sin and saving someone's soul, okay, we know that that's there. But when you cross into the judgment of what's natural versus unnatural, is where we're going to get in trouble, or where we are in trouble, because then we justify our thinking, our thoughts, and our feelings, and our action based on, well, that's not natural, and therefore it's wrong, and therefore it's sinful, kind of backing it back up into religion. Well, it's sinful, and we're trying to save their soul. No, you're judging them based on what you think is natural versus unnatural. And church leaders, not all, but some of them do the same thing and encourage their followers to box in their thoughts, to box in their thoughts and their actions that way. So now that we know that there are gay priests in the Catholic Church, we know that there are gay ministers of religion everywhere now who have come out of the closet.
Yes.
The Catholic Church had a structure for hiding, their gay priests. We don't judge nuns to know whether they, are binary or non-binary kind of thing. There's a lot hidden under all of those, habits. So we don't want to be judging people just because of that, but we do. Binary people are guilty of putting that judgment out in the world and restricting people in our cohort, even the adults who have children enough to make those decisions, and move ahead, that they have to make a decision as parents. Do I accept my child for who he or she is? Or do I show self-interest or protect my shame and embarrassment and disappointment? There's some disappointment in there.
That's what we're seeing a lot in terms of family life. Because as you said before, it was hidden, nobody spoke about it. Now it's more open. The younger generation, they're very open going out there. As you said, they have the social media, etc. Parents, or not even parents, family members are really, really confused, I should say, because within the household or among the family members, there are some who say, okay, we can deal with it, and others who don't agree. So there's a lot of conflict, and really, I know you started in terms of discussing that to maybe help family members better understand, or I don't want to use tolerate, accept, what is really happening out there now. And I say out there, but among us, you know?
Among us, it's really what's happening among all of us, within all families, with your neighbors, your friends, children, or whomever, all of us are in the same pot, in the same
Yeah.
in the same mix. Who we are versus who someone is, because people again try to justify their judgment by accusing people of making a choice that's sinful. It doesn't matter how people explain, this is not a choice. Binary people, when they make a choice to be unfaithful in their marriage or to have several partners, allow themselves that choice. So they're using the same word to judge someone else who's just, people may make a choice about which among their non-binary friends they may have a relationship with, but they're not choosing to be non-binary. There's a difference in at what point is a choice made. It's more a choice when a binary person decides to have 2 or 3 different partners at the same time or in serial fashion. That's a choice, But at the point of deciding who you are as a human being, people just respond to what they feel on the inside, We are forced into patterns when we are small, from the time we are born, whether you put a blue shirt on the child or a pink one, So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's this joke about these 2 babies lying down in their little cots in the nursery of the hospital, and looking down towards their toes and going, "Oh, I'm a boy and I'm a girl." Like, how do you know? Well, pink booties.
Yeah.
We do that from the very start. You're expecting a baby, you start deciding, do you paint the room pink or blue? All of that is to shape, there's not religion at that point that's shaping gender.
Yeah.
It's our buying into this concept of what denotes girl and what denotes boy. It's right. You tell a girl to cross your legs and you say, no, you don't tell a boy that. He could spread his legs as wide as he wants, and you start giving him messages about being a boy. So when at age 5 or 6, and that's as early as children know, meaning they don't wait till they're 11 to know that they want to be a girl. Doesn't matter who tells them they're a boy, or the opposite. They will tell you in the innocence of childhood, I'm not a boy. And then the parents are in trouble because now they have to deal with this thing. So they do everything to force the issue by going to their pastor, by forcing the child into something which is now banned, called conversion therapy. Forcing children to be depressed and so on, because they're telling you who they are, but you don't want that. You want what you want, which is a boy or a girl. I don't want to know anything else. You're a boy or you're a girl. And if you're a boy, I'll beat you into it being a boy. In fact, boys are terrorized more than girls are, because they actually get beaten into being a boy by their parents, by their friends, by society. You will be a boy because I say so. That's what children. So a lot of children leave they're either thrown out by their families very early once they start asserting themselves, or the opposite could be, it's your child. Why do you want to disown your child? But they are ashamed because of their own thinking. As Bob Marley said, none but ourselves could free our minds. None but ourselves could free our minds. Shame and embarrassment is a self-interest thing. It's like, I'm ashamed of what? I'm embarrassed of what? That's self-interest. I'm disappointed because I'm not going to have grandchildren. Although that's a moot point now when you have all the surrogacy available if you have money. But, I'm not going to have grandchildren. Anybody promised you grandchildren?
Nope.
Did you sign up?
You cannot have grandchildren, even with binary children.
Yeah. Then you somebody signed some contract with you to give you grandchildren, Why are you disappointed? Disappointment only comes if you have expectations. What were your expectations? when you gave birth to this child, they promised you that when they get big, they'll give you grandchildren. It happens because it happens. It doesn't happen because it doesn't happen. You know, there's no promise to be fulfilled there. But we get disappointed only when we think there's some unwritten promise to be fulfilled, you know.
Yeah.
So all of those are self-interest things, or the fear of judgment from others.
That's a big one.
That's a big
That's
one.
it.
That's a very big one.
That's a self-interest things as well. Why do you care what your neighbors think about your child? Your job is to love your child and to be there for him or her when they need you, even as adults. It's,
Yeah.
you know, why you fear judgment from other family members? Well, don't invite them to your house anymore. That's all you have to
But
do.
let me just
you know?
ask this.
Mhm.
Isn't that the pressure is the social norms? This is, you know, you're just not conforming. And that's where the pressure is,
know-
because we have been brought up in a certain way to conform for us to be accepted.
Okay. Somewhere along the line, way back when human beings decided, not in a meeting necessarily, but kind of spontaneous decision, you know, joint decision making, that there is something called a norm of behavior.
Yeah.
The word norm comes from the word normal. The definition of normal, you know, that's given in psychology is anything that happens more than 50% of the time. That's all it is. Normal and natural are two different things entirely. So when we say we're conforming to social norms, we are conforming to the norms that were decided at some point in time. Norms change every day. The norms now are all people exist. So when we hark back to old norms, and that's the word, old norms, that's what we're really doing, you know. Are we operating back when we still had a scrubbing board and a tub outside or whatever? Those are old norms. So why do we want to apply old norms now and say, well, it's a normal thing to do? No, you're confusing words in terms of what's normal and what's not. It's normal now, not just now, but it's always normal to have queer people in society and bisexual and so on. It's just that we acknowledging it.
Yeah.
You know,
Allison, I am wondering, and looking again at us and coping, our cohort, coping and living, because so many of us now have responsibility for grandchildren.
Yes. Those who have grandchildren, yes.
Who have grandchildren.
Yeah.
And so many of us are, even more importantly, perhaps supervising, if we're still in the workplace,
yes,
young people who have to live in these contexts. And even if we are out of the workplace and we are now in society doing our giving back, whether it is in a service group or church,
yes, church
this is the reality that we have to live with. And you know, Jennifer, you made the comment of this is how we've been brought up. And I come back again. We are the generation that broke all the rules our parents lived with.
Exactly.
We are wearing pants. We are working on a Saturday, on a Sunday. We are the ones who are allowing our daughters to go to school and pushing them to go to school. That 50, 60 years ago was not a normal thing.
No, exactly.
It was not. And we are the ones now that are talking about this is how I was brought up. When we raised ourselves, breaking probably 90% of the rules that were set for us. You know, and now we have to live in this thing. And I think all of this, the fuss of this is because it revolves around vaginas and penises. And the act of sex, not even love, the act of sex. And we are making a big deal of it and traumatizing ourselves. And Jennifer, as you said, some of us are refusing to get information because of fear, you know, when in fact, we have to just sit back and say, how is this different from the pride that I felt when my granddaughter graduated, or my son opened his restaurant or was featured as a designer of
Yeah.
women's wear.
Or hairdresser
some-
who
or
dressed the
hairdresser.
queen, who dressed the queen of Carnival, you know.
Exactly.
You know.
Why are we preventing ourselves from
Mhm.
I mean, even if you disagree with it, I live with many things that I disagree with, but I
Mhm.
have a decent conversation and I get to understand and I come to a common place where I can still live with my daughter, my son, my granddaughter, my grandson. And if
Mhm.
someone in the workplace or in a social group that I have to work with, I do not immediately have negative feelings for them and therefore probably defeat the purpose of that place.
Of what exactly. You know, the thing, you know, you mentioned a point which harks back to something that I said about sex, in terms of this assumption that people's lives are all about sex. But that interest we have and judgment about who is having sex with whom, how, when, where, and why, you know.
Fastness.
But back in the origin of times, biblical times and colonial times, whenever, even coming forward a little bit, that whole interest in who's having sex with whom revolved around when babies are born, who they belong to. That was all. Somebody gets pregnant. And those days, of course, women had no money of their own, no house of their own, no whatever. They had to have a man take care of that.
Yes.
The state and the government did not want the task of deciding that or spending tax money on it. So they want to identify who the father is. You know,
hence
some
birth
society,
certificates.
yes. So who the father is was only important for the state and government because of who's going to take care of that woman and that child, because women and children were dependent on, if they're not dependent on a man, then they're dependent on the government. The government is like, we don't want that job, so we're going to design systems. You know, and the systems including laws that encourage people to mind their neighbor's business, like which man was actually, up until family court was established in Trinidad had a law where you could have called in a friend and neighbor and so on to say which man you saw coming in that house had caused that girl to be pregnant.
Yep.
You were obligated by law as a witness to say what you saw.
Yes.
So people were drilled into this, minding people's sexual business, you know, and reporting on it or discussing it. And for some reason, we can't get out of that habit when none of the reasons for it exist anymore. You know.
In fact, I think, Allison, we've turned around because a lot of our social policies, social welfare policies are geared towards supporting single parent women.
Yes.
Because nobody minded that woman's business to see who the father was. And therefore, they are now right back where we started.
Right back. You know, we can't free our minds or even understand the history of policies and the history of our behavior patterns. Why did those things happen in the first place? Then, of course, religion jumped into the mix for the same reason, by the way. You know, it's that we can't allow people to have sex outside of marriage because we wouldn't know who the father is. You know, that was really the reason for it. So they had their own laws about it. And it became this, well, sex before marriage is a sin. No, sin was the control, you know, the controller. Otherwise, whatever they tell you, don't do it, and they're going to do it anyway. They have to make you feel more guilty and shamed to say, don't have sex before marriage. Those were the reasons. And therefore, the whole idea of allowing your daughter to use the birth control pill before she got married was like, you make that a sin as well, because you don't understand how all of those things are connected. The fact that your daughter may be making her own money and decide which man she wants to have a baby with, you know.
Oh, which sperm donor she wants to use.
I had two friends who I had to talk down from a cliff simply because their daughters separated. They don't even know each other, but they both called me on the same issue. Their daughter's pregnant. How she got pregnant? Sperm donor. because their daughter said 40 and decide, I don't have no man, I don't want any, but I
Now,
want a child.
now, Allison, that is a binary. They need a letter for that. Huh? this surrogacy and all
Yeah.
that. Those are binary sexual issues that
I mean,
nobody is jumping up about.
in the same week, both of these friends' daughters, as I said, they don't even know each other, but they both know me and
Freeze your
Paul
eggs.
because they're ashamed to tell me their daughter is pregnant. Why are you ashamed? Well, she's not married. I said, seriously, get off of that box. Well, she don't even have a man. I said, oh, and I very casually say, oh, she's a sperm donor. They say, you with that too? I said, what?
And the thing about it is, and I know we may be running out of time, why it becomes important for us, and we cannot call that a North American or first world issue.
No, it's
that it is right in the Caribbean, and if our clinics don't allow it, we jump in on a plane, we go in and get it, and
that's
coming
why
back
I'm
to live
saying
with us.
the world is now small because of technology. It's the same thing is happening
everywhere.
In the Muslim world, Muslim men are killing their girl children because the girl children like, I don't really want to get married, but I
and they can do good.
Killing
the babies.
Yeah.
They don't want to pay a dowry. So they
Exactly.
Babies.
Right. So those are the history of our decision making and so on. If you want to really understand it, it's that's where it started. People had to pin down who the father of the baby was. Why? Because women and children were not allowed, women were not allowed to make their own living and so on. If you got married and your husband died, when your brother-in-law had to marry you because a man had to pay your bills, feed you, and so on. And therefore, we have to know who the father of the baby is. Now we are at a complete turnaround where young women don't care who the baby is. Well, they care on paper. He went to college, he have a degree, doesn't have any diseases, I'm good. That's frightening for parents and grandparents who, in their head, they're still stuck back to how they were brought up.
1920 or 1940. 1940.
You're stuck there because there's a fear about moving forward. There's still a shame and guilt of sin, where even sin was structured to prevent you from having a baby without being married. A lot of the, people's angst about sin center around sex. You could steal, you could murder, whatever, you could go to and get forgiven. Sex, everybody panics.
Don't commit adultery.
No, don't have sex outside of marriage. Those are the things that I still be stuck with and wouldn't let go of. And people have to examine, why can't you let go of that? Yeah. Well, I wasn't brought up like that. We weren't brought up with microwaves and smartphones and and pressure. We weren't brought up with any of that. We weren't brought up to be in the workplace. Well, we were, but prior to us, women had to be rebels to step out of home and go become doctors and lawyers. They have to challenge universities to accept them. Things that we take for granted as women now, and of course, when boys and men didn't measure up to being men, and marrying and replenishing the earth, then they get targeted for murder, for harassment, for conversion therapy, the works.
Oh, they have to migrate, get out of the country, get out
of somewhere, get out of town, go to Palm Beach, Florida, go to the Meccas that accept you.
At this stage with timing, I know we can go on. This is a conversation we could have 10 parts of it. But for today's show, what would you say to us at this stage? How can we, get in terms of acknowledging that this is what it is, and to embrace our family members who may make a choice that we're not in agreement with?
That whole concept of not in agreement with is something that we have to examine as adults and parents and grandchildren, that The fact that we're not in agreement with something that don't mean we are right or that we have any control or power over the situation to make us have all this angst and anxiety about it. That, okay, we could attempt to control what our 5-year-old does, and and our 11-year-old and so on. Once they cross 18 and they step out into the world and disregard what you agree with or what you don't agree with. That's a whole, that's something in ourselves. For example, there was something called conversion therapy for boys, particularly, who looked like they were heading in the opposite, in the non-binary direction. I think there's something that should be called conversion therapy for us as adults. Where people get into groups and discuss it and understand, look, nothing is wrong, but I wouldn't say, we're not going to get into wrong and right now, but in terms of freeing ourselves of that kind of judgment or being controlled by the other people who judge us.
Yeah.
People who have grandchildren and raising them, unfortunately, may be tempted to do what they couldn't do to their children and try to reshape them according to old norms, which is a challenge by itself, and something that people who are raising grandchildren should watch, because they, for some reason, they get to that age and they go all the way back to what they would have liked for their children.
Or themselves.
And then trying to force their grandchildren into that box as well. There has to be a happy medium somewhere. And I wasn't joking when I said there need to be conversion therapy, not for the non-binary people, but for adults, who could attend a group and talk about their fears and their shame and their disappointment, and gradually switch, not totally, but at least to understand that at every point there are certain gateways, and then there are certain crossroads in the evolution of the world where we switch to something else. Changes are happening so quickly now, much, the first 50 years of our life, things kind of stayed a little steady, and all of a sudden it's an explosion. Every day there is something new. We started off, as you say, with LGBT, and then we went to LGBT, and then we're understanding now there's queer, asexual, pansexual, but intersex was always with us, except we put it on paper now. Here, this is what it is, and it has always been here. Stop pretending you don't know that babies could have been born with these mixed parts, right? Stop pretending you don't now know. If you didn't know it before, you now know that there is these other systems in us that have to do with hormones and secretions and all of that sort of thing, that are not just there for fun. They're there to determine how much boy we are and how much girl we are. And sometimes the continuum is somewhere in the middle. That we all have some secondary sexual characteristics that may not belong on the surface to the gender we identify with. We may be bold. I remember when my father first taught me to drive, and I was handling the car so well, people would stop and say, "Oh, she's driving like a man." Why? Yeah. Because I'm handling a car properly. So we all have certain behaviors, and we're proud of them in terms of things that may be identified with the opposite sex. But we are binary, and we know we are whatever we are. And and we could allow people to do that shifting on a continuum, which really came to us naturally, in terms of whether we are extreme girl or extreme boy, or somewhere along the continuum, a little 10% boy and 90% girl, or a little 50% of each thing, and that may be just what we don't see, but then what we see could also be that way, the physical and the physiological, and what, a little 50% here and 50% there. Then what? That's where intersex fits in, and it's very real. And we can't condemn people for that the way some people want to do, or lock them up, or kill them. Because all of that still happens. So for the adults who are struggling, without turning us off in terms of what we're discussing, I think some group discussions more and more, not necessarily to force you to change your mind about who you are.
That's important. That point is important.
But to kind of understand the turn, which is normal. What is normal is change. You know, and we don't have to look far for proof of that from the start of the world to now. That things are going to change, and we may figure some things change for the better and some for the worse, but that's all part of life.
And it's also opinion.
Yeah, that too. It's that's judgment, that we are very good at. So so the topic should continue. I don't mean necessarily now, but in group format, and encourage people, and even in church, when people sit down to have a meeting or so, and they could have, but educational discussions, because this is all education. But education leads to change in terms of how we see the world. We can't decide that we want to see the world exactly how it was 90 years ago, past 90 years ago.
Well, this I think has been a necessary, very, very necessary discussion. I believe that a lot of our cohorts in their hearts are happy that we've had this discussion. And I believe, Allison, that you have helped give a context. We have come a long way. We have come such a long way. And we know that these are conversations we want to have with our children. We just have so many social structures around us that make us feel that we're doing something wrong if we're having the conversation and trying to understand where our children are. We're equating that to jumping in the thing and agreeing with it. And I really, really, really do hope that we've just given a platform, some commonality of language to discuss this issue with whether it's our children, our neighbors, our colleagues. And I am really appreciative of that. Thank you so very much, Allison.
Oh, I'm always happy. I'm an educator at heart, so I am always happy to lift the veil off of, I don't want to use it with ignorance, but I'm using it meaning
that's what it is. It is.
Not the free ignorance, but the lack of knowledge. And we need to open up, some fresh air on it, to say, okay, these are things to be considered. Let's consider them. Thanks,
that was
Daria.
great.
It's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to throw some education and light on a topic.
Definitely. Okay.
And we have nothing else to add. All we have to say is wow. And listen, we still have a long way to go, but we are open-minded.
Check yourselves.
Now
Check yourselves.
Yes. Okay. So we say bye for now. Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
All right.
50 Plus Tribe and follow us from Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean.
Thank you for joining us on this Connections 50 Plus 5.8G Alive show.
We hope you enjoyed the lively conversation and look forward to seeing you next week.
Don't forget to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We really love getting your feedback. Bye for now.